We have another guest from Utah State basketball today. We're going to continue to have these interviews weekly for the next little while with members of the men's basketball team. Last week we had on Dayton Albury, one of the newcomers, and this week we've got head coach Jerrod Calhoun on the line. Welcome to the show, Coach.
Thanks for having me, guys. Excited to be on with you today.
So I know we're planning on having these weekly interviews, although we'll have to take a bit of a break because you guys are going to Europe upcoming soon. I want to talk about that, as kind of somewhat recent news. Like, tell us about, how that comes together and what that process will be like for you guys.
Yeah, it's going to be really good. Today is our third practice, so you get 10 practices before you get to go compete in 3 competitions. So we'll play 1 in Rome, 2 in Croatia. These trips are available to college teams every 4 years. So the trip was already planned before we got here. We've made a few minor adjustments, but excited about this opportunity with these guys to go through the practices, see how we look in the games, and then have a chance to correct it and get ready for the fall.
Have you ever done one of these trips before with one of your teams in the past?
Yeah, this will be my third. So we were in Spain last year, been to Italy a couple times. So, I've been part of these, and I think we've done a really good job so far with our prep, throwing a lot at our guys, certainly on the offensive side, just to kind of see who can retain and process information. So it's been really good so far.
So before we get too much in the team, I just want to ask, what the last 3-ish months have been like for you since you signed on with the team, building a team together. You had to bring in, I think, 9 newcomers, build a coaching staff. What has this been like for you going through this process of putting together a staff and a team?
Yeah, it's exciting. I've done it 3 times now. Certainly, hopefully I'm better, this time around. But, getting the staff together was really, really exciting. Able to bring some guys over with me, and then also some really added some guys that I think provide great value, to our staff. I think staff cohesion is really, really important in today's environment. I think the kids feed off of that. And then being able to identify some guys that had some different recruiting ties to different areas has been really, really good. And then the process to develop a team, obviously we're very, very fortunate to retain 5 players. Those kids have been absolutely awesome in their approach every day and their leadership. Them being part of a tremendous basketball team last year and great success, I think they've done a really good job of helping our new guys, not only on the court but off the court. So I think, all in all, very, very pleased with where we're at.
So what can you tell me about the staff? You mentioned the importance of staff cohesion and all that. What can you tell me about the guys you have on your coaching staff and what they bring to the table, what they're going to bring to the table for this team?
Yeah, I think, first and foremost, great people. They're great to be around. They're fun to be around. They bring a lot of energy each day, and then very knowledgeable. Certain guys will work on different sides of the basketball, but the chemistry has been really good. We've had a lot of long hours, a lot of basketball talks, watched a lot of film, really starting to understand what we need to be successful in this conference. And that's balance, right, on both sides of the floor. We've got to be a great offensive team that's really efficient, that, gets to the free throw line, be able to get some easy baskets from our defense. And, I think defensively we'll play a defense that's not something you see every day, right, a matchup zone that I think could be really, really good with our length and our size. So, that's really what the staff brings. We're right in the middle of recruiting. We want to add 2 to 3 high school players for next year's roster, so we'll start bringing those recruits in here in the next couple weeks, and that's exciting as well.
Coach, as you're getting your guys together and kind of an accelerated tune-up with your team because you're heading to international play, how is the health of your team and how well are they kind of adapting to these all this new stuff that you're trying to throw at them?
Yeah, certainly there's a learning curve, right? There are some similarities of how last year's team played and this year's team played, but Obviously last year's emphasis was to get the ball inside, to grade Osabor, obviously get Darius in a ball screen. I think, with our group, we have multiple guys on the perimeter that can get downhill and create for themselves and then also play out of pick and rolls. I do think we'll have ability to take and make a lot of threes, with Isaac Johnson and Tucker Anderson, and really even Albin and Carson Templin have really made great strides in that department. So, the best teams, I think, are the teams that can win, on their non-shooting nights. So teaching the guys to understand how to cut off-ball spacing is really, really important to a good offense. And then certainly offensive rebounding. We've got to be a relentless offensive rebounding team. So those are some of the things that we've worked on here early. Like I said, we're only in practice 3. We'll have 7 more before we leave, and we're not going to be perfect. We understand that going over there. This is a very, very fast trip, but I think it's really good because we can get a lot of our concepts in the way we want to play basketball and our identity kind of established, hopefully through the summer.
And just to follow up, just the health of your guys so far.
Pretty good. We've had some nicks and bumps and bruises, but a couple guys have missed here and there, but nothing substantial, which is good.
So, Coach, when you came here to Utah State in your opening press conference, you talked about how if you run it back, you have a chance to win a national championship. Unfortunately, not everybody ran it back. Some players graduated, some players ended up transferring. But at this point, after pretty much all the dust has settled recruiting-wise, what kind of expectations do you have for this team going into the season?
Well, I think, every team is different. The expectation for us is to be at our best every day. I think that's what leads to great success, right? You're not really putting a limit on your team. I think the best teams get better throughout the season. So we've got to continue to get better, not only in the summer, but in the fall. We have to learn from what happened in those games this summer that we're getting ready to play, correct some of those things, and just really be at our best. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's about getting in the NCAA tournament, playing your best basketball in March. And that's, there's so many layers to that, right? In the non-conference, we always talk about 3 different seasons, right? The non-conference is critical. I think we've challenged ourselves. We'll see where the numbers are, but certainly have played a really, really good schedule with, Iowa neutral, South Florida coming in here at St. Mary's, a very good MTE in Orlando. We still have 1 game to get, still figuring out that process. So the non-conference will be very challenging. And then obviously I think anybody that follows the Mountain West knows that this league's coming off a record year. So you're expecting another great season inside the league. So what we do in the non-conference and then during league play will ultimately determine our fate for postseason. Obviously there's a postseason tournament, conference tournament, so you want to be playing well in that. Hopefully you're not putting yourself in a position where you have to win it. But I don't think anybody's ever safe, right? Nobody ever really feels great until you hear your name called. So, and then, ultimately you got to advance in the NCAA tournament. I've been pretty fortunate to be part of a Sweet 16 team and a Final Four team. So that's the goal, is to get these guys better every day and be playing great basketball come March.
And we're talking to Utah State men's basketball head coach Jerrod Calhoun. You mentioned the Mountain West coming off a strong year, and that's something I actually wanted to bring up. I know you weren't necessarily in the Mountain West last year, but as you mentioned, great season. It was 4 or 5 teams in the NCAA tournament. But I was kind of going through looking at each of the teams, and I think you can argue that all but maybe 2 of the teams lost their best player in one way or another, transfer portal, graduation. So it seems like a lot of these teams kind of maybe peaked last year. How do you feel like the Mountain West will be able to bounce back from losing a lot in terms of off-season attrition?
Yeah, that happens every year, right? With the landscape today, most of the teams are going to have new rosters, but things don't change, right? The Steve Alford can really coach, Nico can really coach, Richard Pitino can really coach. Coach Dutch can really coach, right? These are programs, Leon Rice, these are programs that have been really, really good for a long time. So it's not their first rodeo. Those programs are going to be able to survive those losses. And I look for this league to continue to get better. Last year was 6 bids. Hopefully we can keep that pace. There's certainly, conference realignment and those sorts of things. But hopefully collectively our conference can take care of business in the non-conference, right? We got to, do our part, but we also got to root for the other teams to have great success. So, new stars emerge. I think that's what fans have to get used to. We're not going to talk about the guys we lost. Obviously, we know Grado Sabor is a great player. He was the conference player of the year. Darius Brown was a great player, right? But at the end of the day, you got to move on. It's a new group. I'm excited to see Mason's growth, Ian's growth, Isaac Johnson's growth, Carson Templin's growth. And then all the guys we're able to bring in can really play. So I think we'll be very, very different. There's no doubt about it. But we just got to keep getting better. That's really the name of the game.
Talk about you mentioned your non-conference schedule, and we've been talking about the conference play as well. Sometimes when there's a new coach and a lot of new players on a team, we see either here or in other places sometimes a philosophy of let's schedule some games to figure out who we are and get comfortable and confident, and then get into conference play. But we also see sometimes coaches come in and challenge their teams and try to put together non-conference schedules that will work for their benefit in net rankings and better position themselves in when it comes to March and Selection Sunday. What was your philosophy coming in? Some of these games were beyond your control because they were already in past agreements. But what's your philosophy when you're looking at your non-conference schedule with a lot of new guys particularly?
Yeah, I think that's probably the best question you've asked. Obviously, recruiting and scheduling are 2 critical pieces to any successful program. So, I've done our schedule personally for a number of years. I don't leave it up to an assistant. Obviously, some of the assistants will do some of the legwork on the phone calls, but I think a head coach has to have really a good idea of what is out there, what we need to do to be successful, to put ourselves in a good position. So we've studied every team in this conference, right, from last year's Boise State's non-league to New Mexico's, right? Those were 2 very interesting studies. Boise played a tremendous non-league schedule, and I think it helped them, get in the tournament. Now, I do think some of the tournament seeds last year were not where they needed to be for whatever reason. But, we wanted to challenge ourselves. I'm not in the belief of playing a cupcake schedule. I think you have to challenge yourself. You have to play some quad 1 games. I think we certainly have 2 of those at St. Mary's and Iowa. We've got to hope that these 2 or 3 other games are quad 2s, right? Ultimately, that's what you want to play, quad 1 and quad 2s. You do have to have some success in some home games. I think everybody out there understands how hard it is to get games here at Utah State, to get opponents coming in. So I thought the South Florida series was really good, trying to possibly add another one with the November 9th date. But also I think you have to understand when you win 28 games and win a regular season title and the numbers look pretty good, whether it's Bartorvik or any of these other analytical sites, it's hard to get games, right? So you got to work really, really hard on the schedule. But I'm a big believer in we've got to go out and play people and beat people, because ultimately it's about the tournament seed, right? How do you get to a Sweet 16 or Elite 8 or a Final Four? You have to have a really good seed. If you look at, what Florida Atlantic or San Diego State did, those teams really, really played people in the non-league, which helped them in their seeding. So that's going to be probably my philosophy every year.
So, Coach, you always talk a lot about seeding, and with the Mountain West, it wasn't maybe as high as some of those teams would have wanted it. What do you feel like the factors were in that? If there are any that can be identified, why maybe Boise State was a 10 seed or Colorado State was in the play-in, why some of these teams weren't as high as they maybe wanted.
I don't know that. We had a head coaches meeting. We actually had 2 committee members on the call. I think a lot of the coaches in that room. My understanding certainly did not agree, with the seating whatsoever. So, I think we just got to do the best we can do, challenge ourselves. And, you got to beat those people. Ultimately, you got to go win some quad 1 and quad 2 games. But every year is different, right? Every tournament looks different. Teams are different. Unless I was on that committee, I don't know if I'd be able to answer that. But me, from looking from the outside in, even last year, I thought a lot of these teams were undervalued on the seed line for sure.
Coach, I got to ask you. I mean, you've only been on the job a couple of months, and there's turmoil in the athletic department. I don't know how well you knew or interacted with some of the individuals that have been affected in the last month, but what's it been like being a coach in all of everything else that's been going on that campus here lately?
Yeah, obviously, I only met Coach Anderson 2 or 3 times. So I've talked to him just a couple times in person when I saw him. And then I worked pretty closely with Jerry Bovee really for about 3 weeks. I think that was about the number, 3 to 4 weeks. So it just, you don't want to see any university, any sort of turmoil, with people. I'm a people person, so I hate to see people going through this. I think it's really, really tough. But we'll, see what happens. And, really we've been so busy with our trip and getting ready for these recruits coming in the next 3 weeks. So, but certainly have heard what's going on. That's for sure.
We're talking to Utah State men's basketball head coach Jerrod Calhoun. I know we're coming up against our time limit. We got to get you off to practice, but I wanted to talk about at least one of the players. I wish we could talk about every single player and go through with this, but one player you mentioned, Mason Falslev, obviously kind of a big magnifying glass on him just because he's the local kid, went to high school around here. Obviously a very exciting freshman year for him. And when we talk about him, it's always, he's going to get better and he's going to improve. And I guess let's ask your opinion on, what areas do you feel like he's going to be taking those step forwards? What parts of his game are we going to be able to see those improvements as he tries to make a rise through the collegiate ranks?
Yeah, I think in all aspects. I think, he works so hard and plays so hard and shows up every day. He's very, very reliable, right? So what you're going to get out of Mace every day. He's been our most consistent player from the time I got here up until now. Certainly that can change, but he's been absolutely awesome in his approach. I think he comes in with a great mindset every day to get better. He's just a competitor. He's a guy that, can get a defensive rebound and drive coast to coast. He's a guy that you can isolate in the half court. I think you can post him up. I think his shooting percentages and his confidence will go up. He has a ton of equity built up in this program, right? Same thing with Ian, same thing with Isaac. Those 3 guys played a ton of meaningful minutes. Same thing with Carson Templin. So I think as those guys continue to get more comfortable with our system, there'll be some, learning curves certainly, but we like to give guys freedom on the offensive end. And I think he's done a wonderful job in improving in all aspects of his game.
Well, Coach, we certainly appreciate your time. I know it's a busy time of the year, but exciting to hear about how this team is coming together. And best of luck, and hope travel well when you head to Italy. It's kind of a strange time to travel right now, but hopefully that all gets sorted out and everything is going smoothly for you guys when you head to Europe here in a couple of weeks.
Well, guys, listen, thanks for having me, and anytime you want us on, we'd love to chat with you guys, and go Aggies.
Thanks, Coach. Again, Jerrod Calhoun, head coach of the Utah State men's basketball program, as they'll be heading to Europe August 9th, and a couple of games over there, and we'll be checking in with the men's basketball team throughout the season.